Hey there, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading, wanting to thank you for stopping by to watch this interview and also make it clear to you that this is not a paid-for promotion. I collect no compensation for the interviews I do here. These companies have been identified as opportunities for investment that could provide an above average return on our investment. This is our opportunity to get to know management, to understand the vision for the company, the strategy they plan to implement, and execute to achieve that vision for the company. So if you learn anything here today and you enjoyed the interview, please do us a favor and subscribe to the Alpha Wolf Trading YouTube channel. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with a follow-up interview, and I've been trying to get a time locked down with this gentleman. He's just too damn busy for me, which is actually a really good thing. Peter Evans from Patriot One Technologies. This is a follow-up. Peter, you've had a lot of interesting announcements lately, and I thought maybe it'd be good to have you come in and share your thoughts on those, but thank you for finding time to share with me.
Oh, thank you, Tim. And again, it's sorry it's taken so long for us to schedule this. I think we've started and stopped about 4 or 5 times. It's been as you referenced some of these announcements, it's been very, very busy. But that's a good thing.
That is definitely a good thing. I view it as a good thing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily reflecting in the share price, but then again, it doesn't really matter what an individual company reports right now, not in this environment, right? So the stocks are following the overall market, not anything to do with their individual stories. However, I would suggest this, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Technically, the stock has held up extremely well, whereas other stocks have fallen. You are just kind of meandering around, which I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. I think in this market, that's an actual win. So we'll get to that in a minute, but let's talk about the biggest deal that has been announced recently, and maybe you can expand upon what that exactly means for Patriot One. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the big announcement was the Oakview Group strategic partnership that occurred venues now, about 10 days or so ago. For those who aren't familiar with Oakview Group, Tim Lewicki is a fascinating individual. Former CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, former CEO of AEG, one of the largest live entertainment venue management organizations. Tim has a vision for disrupting the industry, the whole live entertainment, arena, sports, stadiums kind of industry. And he's executing on that. He's doing it very, very well. He's looking at changing the business model about how everything comes together to put on a concert, for example, and also how you can leverage technology to completely change things from going to an arena to actually having an experience. And so it's been a joy to work with Oakview Group as we've been kind of bringing that together. Now, what does this mean for us with Oakview Group? Well, they did a lot of due diligence. They spent a year really digging into how to change that patron experience, particularly when it comes to entry into the building, right? And more security meant a poor experience as people had to stand in longer and longer lines. So they liked our value proposition. They liked our promise. They did some aggressive testing. Prevent Advisors does all the red teaming and certification of security for the NHL and NBA, Major League Baseball, and all these organizations. And they put us through our paces, and they verified our technology as the best that they could see in the market space. And so with Oakview Group now managing some 350 venues, as well as building brand new venues like Climate Pledge Arena, Manchester Football Club, the UBS home of the Islanders, Moody Center in Austin, the Reinventing Baltimore, Acrisure Arena down in Desert Palms. They're completely changing the industry, and it's great to be acknowledged as their preferred partner. And the solution they've technically validated is the solution they want in all those venues. So this is fascinating. Now, so I had an experience with one gentleman at the Moody Center, and when you think of the normal sales cycle, We go to a customer, they have to go demonstrate the technology. They do their own red teaming and verification on it. They go and think about their own security operations. Maybe we get a contract together after getting proposals together, all these sorts of things. All that has shrunk. You now have a standard agreement in place that Oakview Group has vetted, validated, and put their stamp on. You now have our solution, which they have vetted and validated and tested the heck out of, right? And we have locations like the Moody Center where people can come and go. So any new venue who's looking at this is saying, solutions validated, agreements already in place, pricing's already agreed to, others have used it and they validated it. Where do I sign? So the sales cycle has now shrunk significantly, and all those venues are now in line to start kind of bringing the same value proposition to every one of their customers and their patrons. So we're incredibly happy with this.
So you've got that going on. Then you've got the initiative with the schools and which is, I think, is an absolute must. And that dialogue is changing as well. From
very much.
Just talked.
Yeah, you and I, the last time we talked, Tim, we were talking a little bit about our outbound strategy has always been going after arenas, stadiums, live entertainment. Why? They're already using security. They already have security staff. The patrons are used to being screened, and they already have budgets. So they look at us and they go, better, faster, cheaper, better experience for my patrons. And it becomes a spending shift. That's a much easier sale. Any sales guy will tell you that. Versus, say, going after school and saying, okay, they have no budget. They're competing for budgets. They're shrinking budgets. There's 50 different politicians who are involved in every decision. Not very appealing. Oh, it's always got to go to RP because it's a public company. So anytime we had any inbound from a school or a hospital, maybe 2-3 inbounds a month, right? And there was always kind of tire kicking, exploratory and things like that. So we kept our eye focused on the ball where the money was and people were writing checks, but we'd still engage, right? Now, unfortunately, since the shootings in Uvalde, and we're seeing these shootings in the last 30 days, there's been 5 gun incidences in healthcare organizations, which is horrific. Right. And the healthcare organizations we're talking to are saying that there's 2 people working in healthcare who are assaulted every hour. And this is a terrible state of society. So we've really noticed a fascinating change where we used to get 2 or 3 inbound leads a month. Now we're getting about 2 or 3 a day. And the tone has changed. And it's changed from, we're tire kicking to, we are going to deploy a solution. We have to protect our patients. We have to protect our doctors, and we have to protect our nurses where the anxiety level is very high. So people aren't waiting for governmental, grants and funding, and they're taking action into their own hands. So while all our efforts have been on the stadiums, right, in the arenas, at least 50% of our pipeline is unmarketed to inbound, pleading with us, bring us a solution.
And I think that trend is probably going to continue. I mean, any place where you're drawing large crowds, and I just think like movie theaters, right? I mean, we've had incidents there. We've had any place where there's a big group of people. Now we're doing it on parades and right. I mean,
you're right. I mean, we're seeing these in churches. We're seeing them in all sorts of places. 2-3 weeks ago, there was a shooting at an amusement park where 3 people were shot up in Pittsburgh. I think a week or so ago, there was one where it was a high school football game, and some teenager pulled out a gun and shot others. This is going on everywhere. And it's unfortunate, and it's a very sad state of society. And I think, business owners, the school systems, the healthcare systems, shopping mall owners, you've got a bit of a responsibility to say, I have a due diligence to provide care for those who are patrons of my venue, right? If we want to have some semblance of community where we can all gather once again, and we can all enjoy each other's, each other's time and thoughts and interactions.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what exactly it is. I know that the country is more divided in many ways than I've ever experienced, but I don't know if it's self-entitlement. I don't know exactly what's going on, but it really just seems like people's patience levels are really, really short, and respect for human life is seems to be diminishing, right? I mean, it's just like, and that's scary to me. It's a sad situation, but it is it is good for Patriot One, right?
Yeah, it's very good for us because, in our sense, we have a very scalable solution. We have a very flexible solution. I don't care if you want it indoors, outdoors, wide doors, narrow doors. I don't care if you want it to look like a beautiful opulent casino, or you want it to be something that looks like a metal detector, wide, narrow. We can fit any environment. We've designed the platform. And there was a very interesting piece of feedback that was given us by the chief security officer at Kia, one of our customers out of Georgia, where he said, I looked at a lot of different options and alternatives and solutions and things like that, but every single one of them would have forced me to have to change my business and my security operations, the flow of my business. Okay. Now, this is a company that makes about $1 million a minute of revenue in that manufacturing plant. So can you imagine having to disrupt that when you've got that so fine tuned that you're making $1 million? You've been in an auto manufacturing plant, like everything is organized down to the minute tenth of a second. Have you got to disrupt that in order to integrate security? He said, with your solution, I could just put it in place and it fit into the flow of my business without any sort of disruption. And in fact, it's accelerated my business. So those millions of dollars per minute I'm making a whole lot more of those. So the ROI for that gentleman was very, very high. And consequently, he's become one of our biggest advocates to manufacturing organizations all around the world.
That's no, I mean, that's fantastic news. And just to back up for a minute, because I'm forgetting, we didn't really talk about what the product is, and that's because we did a prior interview, and it was an in-depth interview. If you want to go back and watch that, you can get the full scope of exactly what it is they provide. But it is artificial intelligence, like a metal detector type setup, but not. Right? It's artificial intelligence security, which is enabling a much faster pace of people to get into the stadium than having to go through a metal detector.
Yeah, the simplest way that I like to describe it to people, Tim, is look, digital transformation using artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics, things like this has changed so many parts of our society. We used to drive to brick and mortar buildings. Now we buy everything online with Amazon. And not only do that, but Amazon is giving us recommendations because it knows all about us, right? We used to have to go to a brick and mortar bank to go deposit a check. When was the last time you went to a bank branch to deposit a check, Tim? Never. Digital transformation, I can move money on my cell phone, right? Digital insights has changed all these segments of the world. Education, just this podcast that we're doing right now, for example, right, which can then stream out to millions of people. And yet we haven't applied that kind of digital transformation and the same benefits for lots of data, which give you quality insights and allows massive scale. We haven't applied that to physical security until now. And so if you think of the past and metal detectors, when people started to be worried about weapons, the metal detector was built for the penitentiary system to make sure the prisoners weren't carrying keys to the handcuffs, right? It was built for a different problem. But when things like 9/11 happened and we started to worry about terrorist acts in places where people gather, the only solution was a metal detector or those handheld wands or to do pat downs, right? And it wasn't really built for that solution, or built for that problem. So the more that society has become riskier, the more we've had to turn up the detection levels on these walk-through metal detectors, which consequently has led to long, long lines. That's a metal detector, detecting metal under the assumption that metal could be a weapon. In our case, what we've done is we've developed a weapons detector. So don't alert on metal, alert on weapons. So for all those people standing in line to go to their favorite MLB game and get their hot dogs and pretzels and things like that who aren't carrying a weapon, why should they stand in line and be punished? Let them just stream in. Watch, wallet, keys, whatever's in your pocket, just keep on walking like you're walking down the sidewalk. For those people who happen to be carrying a gun or a knife, right, it will alert on those people and detect them. And those people get pulled aside for a secondary screen to remove the knife or the gun. So consequently, the metal detectors, they get on average of 300, 350 people through them in an hour, right into a venue. With our solution, again, depending on the demographics and the layout and the flow of the building, 2,000, 3,000, 3,600, people through in an hour. So almost a 10x improvement in terms of throughput. So I'll give you an analogy in your backyard, Tim, in Las Vegas. Last year in July, as COVID was reopening, one of the biggest concerts that came out in July was Garth Brooks playing there at the Allegiant Stadium, right? 65,000 people in July. It was about 110 degrees, so hot. And the lines to get in were like 90 minutes long. And they were so bad that they had to emergency bring in all these watering stations where people could come and get water while standing in line all the way down the strip, right? Crazy stuff. So with our technology, all those people probably would have been in about 1/10 the time. So instead of 90 minutes, like I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's about seven times faster than a metal detector.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. So instead of people waiting in line for 90 minutes, they're in like 10, 12 minutes. And what are those people doing once they're inside the stadium? Buying beer and hot dogs
And
and
t-shirts and
t-shirts,
whatever else, right?
So as an example, we were at one arena, I want to say 2, 3 weeks ago. It had 5 nights of Harry Styles concerts, right? If you know Harry Styles, 15,000 people lined up for 12 hours ahead of time, okay? And they were all waiting to go in. And with the traditional walk-through metal detectors, they would have had 42 of those. It would have taken those folks over an hour to get in. We had them all in 22 minutes. Unbelievable, unheard of. And they sold $6 million of t-shirts and hats over the course of those nights as a
Right.
result.
And
So,
that's so it's not just a better consumer experience. It's a more profitable deal for the venue.
yeah, and depending on how the venue wants to run their operations, because I can get in people 7 times faster, I can actually reduce the number of security guards and save myself money, right? Or I might keep a large number of lanes and a larger number of security guards and get people in much faster. So you're trading off, am I optimizing for really good patron experience and getting them in fast? Or do I want to lower my cost of operations or somewhere else on the curve? Let's find the sweet spot. The net of it, though, is in third-party testing and verification, side by side with a walk-through metal detector, where people went through with this gun, this knife, this gun, this knife, all the way through. Every single case, we detected exactly what the metal detector did, and we even detected things the metal detectors didn't. Okay, so one, much safer solution. Two, people are in a lot faster, so they're not outside getting agitated in a crowd, which could be a safety risk, right? Three, you get a lot of digital insights about those people as they go in, so you can start fine-tuning your security operations, your business operations. Why is this concession line 20 minutes long and that one's 2 minutes long? So I get all this data to use, right? Three, I'm generating a lot more revenue, and I'm doing it in an environment where people are very, very worried about patron safety and patron experience. I think, I can't remember if it was Mr. Dolan and the sphere he's building in Las Vegas, but I heard a quote from him, and he said something to the effect of, I'm not going to spend $2 billion building the world's most amazing venue and experience, only to have people stand out in the sun for 90 minutes to go through a walk-through metal detector where they got to take everything out of their pocket, and it's a personal infringement. Not happening.
Right. No. So when we talked, I mean, and I was going to try and pull up what do your columns look like? But you can
Yeah.
pretty much make them look like planners, like this thing right
Yeah.
here, right?
Well, yeah, the columns themselves, they sit on either side of a doorway, about 10 inches square, about 4.5 foot tall. And our original, vision for the product was to make them as covert as possible. To wrap them in teak, put planters on the top. And we have one casino that's doing that right now, and they just look like planters in the hallway, right? Just either side of the door, whatever people walk through. In other cases, a lot of the venues are actually wrapping them in their own logos, right? So if you look at the Moody Center in Austin, Texas, they're in a beautiful black with In the Mood on the side and orange kind of their logo design. In some cases, some of the venues have gotten very creative, and they said, why don't we sell this to advertisers and make security a moneymaker?
Absolutely.
And if you think about this, I don't know, Geico or BMW or Budweiser goes and sponsors an entrance into an arena. Only the people who go in that entrance see it. 100% of people going into a venue will get scanned by our technology. So 100% will see those columns. So 100% of the advertisers should see that as premium advertising space.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean,
We're working with one very, very large venue, incredibly well known. And the chief security officer looked at me and he said, Peter, what you don't realize is I've already sold the advertising space on this and I'm making a lot of money.
I love that. I mean, I love that. I mean, you can literally have a little competition going. Hey, listen, you want to sponsor this event, Bud, or you want it to be Coors? You want this to be, I mean, it's very, especially with casinos. I mean, if they're opening up a new restaurant in one of these casinos, right, and they want to draw people to that restaurant, there's all kinds of things. And then you're actually making money off of your security system.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, the first priority is let's keep the venue safe.
Right.
I mean, sometimes people get too enamored with the marketing and saying, oh, I can get people in fast. Oh, I can advertise. But you have to be careful because the primary objective is keep people safe or safer. Now, if I can do that better than the metal detector and get all these other values and drive these cost savings, drive all these revenues, we've got a winning formula, right? And ultimately that winning formula now, because of the flexibility of the platform, I can go into hospitals, I can go into schools, I can go into stadiums and arenas. You know, I was at one hospital, they've got a particular color tone for all their walls. Their pillars are now all wrapped in that color tone, right? You know, we can go, you know, one emergency center environment, because of all the wheelchairs, gurneys, cars, trucks, we had to have flexibility about where we actually place these to get the maximum detection efficacy. And we could, because of the way the platform is designed, the products have been designed to go pretty well in any environment.
So let's talk about the fact too that it is artificial intelligence.
Yes,
and
sir.
I think, one of the examples you had given me last time, I was really impressive, which was, I think we talked about, you know, the 3D printer guns, right? Where you could literally have 5 different people bring in 5 different pieces.
Yes.
And then assemble it on the inside, right?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, some people ask that question all the time about 2 things, about ghost guns, like a 3D printed gun, right? Or a disassembled gun. And so, you know, there's 2 thoughts there. One, for a gun to be used more than once, it has to have a hardened steel barrel. The explosive power, right, and the heat that's given off by the explosion of a bullet, right, is going to distort the gun. So it couldn't be used a second time unless it's got that hardened steel barrel, right? And so that's critical. You know, we tune in on the gun parts, the barrel, the breech, the clip, these kinds of things, to be able to detect those. And they give off certain kind of characteristics, certain signatures. You know, you're looking at reflection properties, you're looking at the density of the steel, the magnetic interference, all those kinds of things. And what the AI system is doing is it's correlating all that data. Okay, I've seen this kind of magnetic interference, I've seen this kind of reflective property, I've seen this kind of conductivity. This looks like 99% certainty the barrel of a gun. So even if somebody has disassembled a gun and one guy's carrying it apart and the other guy's carrying in the bullets, we can see those piece parts and correlate that together. And so you have to. You also look for things like metal detectors. You can fake those out just by swinging your arm as you walk through. So I can get a 357 Magnum through a walk-through metal detector simply by swinging my arm, right? We watch for those kinds of things too. So you cannot fool the system. And that's where the value of AI comes in. You know, the other thing I like about the AI software is it's very, very extensible. We've had customers come to us and say things like, well, using your software, because not only is it on these pillars, but we can actually put it on the camera systems in a venue. So let's say I've got a sports stadium and I've got cameras out in the parking lot, or a school, better example. I've got cameras out in the parking lot. We can detect the individual with a gun, you know, holding in their hand as far away as the camera can see. And so let's say I've got a school, for example, I can detect that perpetrator in the parking lot, not when they're at the door and coming in. So that gives me the advantage of time. Now, that same AI software that can detect this as a gun can do things like look at crowd disturbances, fights, anomalous behavior, someone dropping a bag and leaving it and things like that. And we can tune it to do anything. So we've had venues come to us like Broadway theaters and say, if I gave you a database of all the people we're worried about who are stalkers or who've been prohibited from the stadium because they vandalized things, right? Could you detect that? And the answer is yes. Could I start doing things like integrating and automated ticketing? Of course. So you, Tim, could be walking up to Allegiant Stadium to see a game. And instead of standing in one line to have your bag checked, standing in another line to have your ticket checked, standing in another line to go through the walk-through metal detector, and then the guards worrying, has this guy been banned or not? Because we don't know, we can't tell. A walking speed as you're walking, 12 yards away, this is Tim. He's a valid patron. He hasn't been banned. He's been here 10 times before. Maybe we need to send him to the VIP entrance. Oh, he's got a valid ticket. He doesn't have a weapon. Let him in. And all you've done is walk down the sidewalk and in the front gate, right? No divesting of products, no divesting of personal items, no pat downs, no pulling off for secondary screening or any of that nonsense. Completely changes the game on your experience.
So everything sounds rosy. Everything sounds just like amazing, Peter.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges? So
Challenges.
as things are ramping up here, I'm thinking to myself, how are your production capabilities? How are your abilities to service the customer once you get them established? All of that stuff. How are those things?
Well, they sort of one challenge I could highlight beforehand, and we'll get to that. One of the biggest challenges we have is, you get the security people looking at this and going, "Wow, okay, this is good." I was talking to a gentleman today. They got a real problem with one of their entrances. The way it's configured, it's a disaster for the arena. And so they see something like ours and go, "This is great." Guest services people, they like it too. The challenge is you always get to the CFO and he says, "Well, we haven't had a gun incident for the last 5 years. Why should I invest in something new? Do I really need to do this?" So we always get that kind of a situation that slows down your sales cycle. In terms of capacity, from a supply chain point of view, the sensing technologies we're using are not that unique that we've got significant impact from the supply chain. So that's good. We've got subcontract manufacturers that we use for the actual, we come up with the hardware design, the software design and all that, but we do subcontract down the assembly of the systems. And we need to ramp that up more. We've got a certain amount of capacity, but based on demand, I've got to accelerate that ramp. So that's something we're working on right now.
Is that also diversified in regions?
Yes, we've got two different regions that we're doing in North America with two different manufacturing companies. And again, they're more like assembly than the actual hardware design and manufacturing. The biggest challenge for scale right now, quite frankly, is we need to accelerate on, let's call it the pre-sales and post-sales support sides, right? And us sales organizations and salespeople and staff to be able to consume the demand that's coming at us, as well as field service engineers. These are highly technical, highly capable, very hard to find individuals who can work with customers to architect the solution, right, and make sure the right design for their environment. Because one stadium that's 30 years old is very different than one that's 1 year old, right? And then post-sales support. This is new, right? And like any new technology, just like when walk-through metal detectors were used for the very first time, anything that's new, people are somewhat reticent to use it. It's a change in process, a change in behaviors. We see some things with fans who are so used to walk-through metal detectors, they start taking stuff out of their pocket and they start putting their hands above the air and they start spinning in circles. And it's a little crazy. It's going to take a while for using our technology to become a habit, not only for the security staff, but also for the fans.
Right.
And so that post-sales support, to wrap that support around the customers, to help them streamline and improve those processes continuously, takes time and takes people. We can put together training videos, which we do. We can put together best practices documentation, which we do, but it still takes time for old habits to be broken and new habits to be put in place. And in order for people to really say, aha, I get it, we need to have that staff. So it's really right now, my biggest challenge is scaling staff, to be quite honest.
Okay. Which is a good problem to have, right? Especially if we're going into a recession, you're going to have all kinds of people looking for jobs.
Yes, but you want the right people, the right skilled people with the right approach. People like you.
So the market has been it's been tough for the last 15 months for small caps, micro caps, and I'm going to move the deck so that we can just talk about the chart for a minute here.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, it's actually been pretty impressive that the chart has held up the way it has held up. I'm going to move your logo out of the way, but
yep,
it's in a downtrend, right? but if you can see, it's starting to coil up. We're getting tighter and tighter. These ranges are going to tighten up, and then eventually it's going to break one way or another. And you really have just kind of been going sideways,
Yeah.
which actually is, in my mind, is a good thing. That in this market, that's impressive that you could actually go sideways instead of just straight down.
Yes.
Right. So I think you've got a really good, clearly defined area right around 27, 25 cents is seems to be acting as a pretty good support area.
Mhm.
You've got some resistance up here right around 35 cents, right? So it kind of just bouncing around in that area. But eventually, I think what's going to happen is you're going to wind up taking out that trend line. And
Yeah.
you take out that trend line, that's going to be a significant move. When I say take it out, I mean close above it. I don't
Yes.
care if you pierce it. Piercing doesn't mean anything to me throughout the day. It's where you close. And if you close above it, I think that's going to be a positive thing. Your next area is going to be where you're going to have a little bit of resistance, probably at the 200-day moving average, which is right around, what is that, 38 cents or so?
Mhm.
38 to 40 cents. You're going to have some resistance there. And then if you can clear that, then I would imagine the next area of resistance will be the $1 holla, right? A
Yeah.
nice round number.
Yep.
Right? If you can get above a buck and close above a buck, that changes the picture dramatically, because there are some funds that can't even, can't buy a stock that's below a buck, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So what I also find interesting is you're getting some interesting volume spikes.
Mhm.
Volume precedes movement, right? So when you start to see volume spikes, and no one that's building a position of any size is going to build that position in one buy.
Yeah.
They're going to do it over time, right? So you see a spike in volume, the share price goes up, they let it pull back on very light volume, like you see here. I mean, there's like no volume, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get another volume spike, right? That's somebody that's strategically building a position.
That's right.
That's what I believe, right? So I think, all the things are, it sounds like from a fundamentals standpoint, from the story, from when you came in, Peter, how different is this company today?
We're entirely different, to be quite honest. I mean, there's sort of 2-3 thoughts to unpack your comments here. Let's start with the last one first. If I dial back the clock, and I think it's part of our package that I send over to you, Tim, March of last year, we didn't really have anything. We had a product that we could demonstrate to people, but it was packaged wrong for mass deployability. We had a couple of contracts, but they were mostly people paying for some pilots and some trials and things like that. Less than $1 million of backlog. Okay. So fast forward over the next 16-ish months, right? We've had NHL teams sign up with us, right? We've had the Office of the Inspector General, who goes through aggressive due diligence, and the Department of General Services sign up with us. We should soon be doing our second department of the Fed government. We've had, Oakview Group, not to be taken lightly. We've had major auto manufacturers, right, like Kia, and one whose name I can't mention, but everyone knows them, right? We've got other companies similar lining up, schools, healthcare organizations, stadiums, arenas. We have validation by the marketplace, whereas 12 months ago, we didn't have that. So if I was a major investor looking to buy in, an institutional investor looking to buy in, the story makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of good walking around sense. And I'd say for the prior 5 years of Patriot One, we had a good story to tell. Exactly the story we've been talking about today, about the need in this marketplace for weapons detection solutions. But we didn't have the proof points. We didn't have the validation, right? When you've got someone like an Oakview Group, Office of the Inspector General, when you've got organizations like the Moody Center, the San Jose Sharks, Kia and others, those aren't to be taken lightly. They go through aggressive due diligence before they sign up and they purchase a product, because they're putting their reputation and their risk management organizations on notice. So now we have the validation, and it's unfortunate that validation has actually occurred at a time when the market is in turmoil. To your point about the market, I did an investor call a few weeks back, and I went back and did a little research, and I started with January 1st of this year. before things got really crazy. And if I look at our price, and I did this analysis about 10 days ago, so before the Oakview announcement, we were down 5% on the year from January to then. Now with the Oakview announcement, we're actually up over the year, okay? Compared to the Russell 2000, Russell 600, to compare to our major competitor who's down 40-something% on the year, the Russell indexes are down 35, 30, 25%. NASDAQ's down 25, 30%. Heck, Apple, Google, and stalwarts like that are down by 30% or more. So the fact that we've kind of stayed flat or maybe slightly up, I think that's kind of a win. I always say to myself, well, what if the market was flat? Would we be up 30% on the year or more? I think one of the things that's also holding our shares back a little bit in terms of trading is we're primarily traded OTC here in the US, on the TSX of Canada. A lot of the institutional investors, and we've been aggressively, now that we've got the proof points, we parked going out to the marketplace and the institutional investors and doing IR roadshows and things like that. Now we've relaunched those activities and we're getting out and doing those investor briefings constantly and continuously because we have a story to tell with proof points behind it to validate it. We've got referenceability. But what's holding back some people is, they want to be like a major institution, might want to have, be trading under SEC regulations. Or maybe they haven't seen enough liquidity in our stock to support them taking a major position. So these will be things that we will turn around. We'll, drive more liquidity in the stock. We'll continue to get the message out, right? And we'll continue to create vehicles whereby it's much more comfortable for US-based investors to put money into us other than OTC.
Let me ask you a question, Peter. So I'm sure one of the things, I'm sure you get hounded. When are you gonna uplist to the NASDAQ, right? I'm sure you get hounded for that.
Yeah.
And look, just uplisting to the NASDAQ, just to uplist to the NASDAQ isn't always the best, greatest idea. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're not ready for it, if you don't have the growth in the wind at your back, and you're firing on all cylinders, and there's no sign of slowdown, then you're actually could be setting yourself up for a real miserable couple of years, because you'll spend that time trying to stay listed on the NASDAQ.
Yes.
Right? That's no fun. So moving when it's the right time to move, I think makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're building that base, you're building that platform now in which to launch from, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Tim. I mean, would I like to uplist to the NASDAQ at the right time when it's pragmatic to do so? For the reasons you talked about. It opens us up to a much larger investor base, which will create a lot more interest in the stock, a lot more liquidity in the stock, a lot more institutional investors. So there's a lot of benefits to it. But as you point out, there's also a lot of work, and you better make sure that you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 quarters behind you of trends, and you've got the machine built in a manner that you have 3, 4, 5, 6 quarters in front of you where you've got predictability in your revenues. We're getting close. We're not there yet. I like what we've seen the last couple of quarters. I like what the next couple of quarters are kind of offering. And so do I see it in our future? Yes, but at the right time, right? Uplisting just for uplisting's sake could be what's that old saying? Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it.
Yeah. So I think maybe, and you bring it up, I mean, and this is typical of OTC health. Volume, thinly traded, right? It is difficult for anybody that wants to build a position of any size. And then of course, when you're in the pennies, everybody worries about, a potential reverse split, right?
Yep.
I mean, those are all common things, and that could keep people on the sidelines, right? I myself, I've never viewed reverse splits. I mean, look, there are companies that do reverse splits to survive.
Yeah.
And then there are companies that do reverse splits from a position of strength, right? They're two very different things. I love shrinking down the amount of shares outstanding, right? I love small floats, because what does that mean? That means when it becomes a hot commodity and people figure out the whole story, there's only one way you're getting more shares, and that's if you pay up for them.
Yeah. It's a supply demand equation, right?
Correct.
Right.
And I love that scenario.
Yeah, if you can keep the liquidity higher on a smaller base of shares, it becomes a very interesting supply demand curve that puts a lot of pressure up on the stock.
Right. So, but I'm sure that that keeps maybe some people on the sidelines, right?
Yeah.
You don't have any immediate plans to do a reverse, or do you, Peter?
Well, there's a leading question, Tim, and I could not answer it without being
Yeah,
in jail, and you know
you'd have
that,
to
right?
kill me. I know.
Yeah,
I just thought I'd throw it out there.
yeah. I couldn't comment one way or another whether we were or were not. I wouldn't be allowed to, regardless.
Right.
But if we are contemplating or considering those kinds of things, if and as we have to, we will certainly, inform the investor community.
Right. Okay. I mean, I look at it like this. If you're a long-term investor and you look at it and you can see where the growth could come from and where this industry is going, the benefits to it all, you don't have to take your entire position in one swoop, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You take a little starter position. I
Yeah.
mean, what's your risk reward here at 30 cents, right?
Well, yeah. And I think to your point, Tim, the stock is held up very well despite the market decline. So, and I don't see that changing. I think, as we continue to announce more and more and more venues, and I do see that accelerating, there's going to be upward pressure on the stock, right? And if there isn't upward pressure on the stock because of the small liquidity, then at some point people are going to take a look at it and say, this thing's massively undervalued for liquidity reasons, not for any other reason, right? So it's just a matter of the market catching up to what we're doing, is the way I
Right.
look at it.
And then there's this other thought that goes through my head. Why wouldn't somebody want to just acquire you guys?
Mhm.
Right.
Well, you could say the same about a lot of tech startup companies right now whose share prices are depressed because of what's happening in the marketplace. I've been part of M&As before, both as the acquired company and the acquiring company. And you always kind of look at these things opportunistically, not just based on the share price, but does it fit your business model? Does it fit your strategy of where you're going? Is it accretive to your business? Does it open up new markets, new opportunities, new revenue streams that you otherwise wouldn't get to? It's always a build versus buy decision for a lot of these companies.
Yeah. And so and that's something to really think about, because I think one of the things that we are going to see a big pickup in is mergers and acquisitions. And
Mhm.
I think that's going to be a definitive moment of when, maybe the bleeding is done in the markets. Because if you're a company right now in this rising interest rate environment that needs cash, you're probably not sleeping well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it makes sense to partner with somebody that's in a good cash position, and it strengthens both companies, as opposed to going out and doing a really shitty financing deal,
Mhm.
maybe doing a merger makes more sense, or a JV or whatever, right? And I think we're going to see that happening.
I think you're going to see it across the market, and there's going to be different options that serve different companies, depending on your point, their cash position, their growth position. I've seen people walk away from deals, not just because of the cash, because while it was a great business, it didn't fit their channel strategy, and they couldn't figure out how to bring the solution to market in a way that fit their business model. So there's all sorts of reasons why deals, are done or not done. More deals are not done than they are done because
Right.
of all sorts of other challenges. In our case, like I have a fiduciary responsibility to every shareholder, right, that we represent, to evaluate all options, whether that's raising more equity, whether it's taking debt, whether it's looking at M&A, whether we acquire or someone acquires us, whether it's joint ventures, and we'll continue to look at those. We looked at a few things over the course of the past year, and we found the valuations were wrong, right? If we see something that we think is very, very appealing and is going to accelerate shareholder value, then we've got a responsibility to do a thorough investigation on behalf of those shareholders.
So look, I think this is a really exciting story. I think, Peter, you've done, since you've come in, and I'm not just saying just you, I mean, you've got a whole team around you, and I know that you guys have executed, right? I mean, it seems to me you have a very clear strategy. You have a vision of where you want to go, and you guys are executing. That's the
Yeah,
way I see it, right?
that's
And maybe
exactly.
the market isn't seeing that right now. They're not rewarding you for the way that you are executing. At some point, unless this is the end of the world, I do believe that's coming, right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. If it wasn't coming, Tim, I wouldn't be here. I get the benefit of seeing the numbers every day. I get the benefit. I think I've had 6 calls with customers, 3 calls with investors, a couple of board calls today. I get the benefit of all that kind of detail. And if I didn't like what I'm going to see, I'd leave. I
how
love what
many,
I'm.
speaking of that, how many times have you done the turnaround thing?
Whew, 1, 2, 3. It depends on how you define a turnaround. One company was 250 million publicly traded and had 14 products, of which only one had any revenues. And then within 18 months, we turned it into a very, very balanced company with 30% growth that got acquired for billion 5. So, I probably 3, 4 times, but with small startups of this size, twice.
Okay. And track record is pretty good in there.
Yeah, I've only had one that I'd only have one that I said wasn't successful, and the primary reason was myself and the board just completely disagreed on what the growth strategy was. So we parted as friends,
Right.
right? And so but other than that, the path to me for success on these turnarounds, you have to get hyper focused on a market and line everything up in your company around that. Your marketing messages, your pricing strategy, your sales strategy, channel, direct, your product features. A school has different features they want in a product like ours than a stadium or a venue, right?
Right.
A healthcare organization has different feature functionality, and sometimes it's the simplest thing. Do I want Wi-Fi connectivity or plugged Ethernet connectivity? Sometimes it's something as simple as that, and you have to line up everything in your business so you become the dominant player to a marketplace where you're the perfect fit, right? And I'd rather have 70% market share of a $1 billion marketplace where everyone knows each other and they all pick up the phone and they call their chief security officer buddy over at the other healthcare organization or the other school, the other stadium, and go, hey, I just used this, it works. That referenceability is worth gold and more than any other marketing that's out there. So, the strategy, use the word execution, pick a battle, decide to be the very, very best at it and get everything in your company perfectly aligned with that. And then what happens is, it's kind of like bowling pins. You knock that one down, and the next 2 adjacent ones knocked down, and the next 3 adjacent ones knocked down. It's why we said, look, we're not going to be in 20 countries around the world. We're going to be the US. And it's why we had 12 products in the portfolio, none of which were really developed very well. And we said, we're going to go after this one where there's a real weapons problem. We're going to be the best, right? As opposed to having 12 half-baked products and hoping one of them sticks and seeing which one becomes revenue. That's a strategy for failure, right? So, and then execute against that. Don't take your eye off the ball, right? And then, when you're the dominant player, you've got the luxury of profitability, you've got the luxury of a growth engine, you've got the luxury of, annuity revenues that just keep giving you all every year. And now you can say, okay, let's look at the next adjacency. Now the next one, and you grow that one.
Yeah, and let's talk about that reoccurring revenue model, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is a software. I mean, this is a reoccurring. This is a subscription
Yeah,
business, right?
exactly. We've set it up as a subscription business. Now we do have customers who are very flush with cash, casinos as an example, who come to us and say, I just want to pay for it up front. Okay, we can do that. But for the bulk of our customers, it's kind of a monthly recurring revenue model, right? And we're just seeing, like, every customer comes on, we just stack more and more and more recurring revenue on top of that. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And from as a person who kind of grew up in the SaaS world and SaaS industries, your valuation multiples are much higher on those recurring revenue SaaS subscription model businesses than they are on kind of the one-time upfront models.
Right.
You get less choppiness in the revenues, much more predictability in terms of growth. You start every quarter with already having a revenue number in the bag, and now you're just adding to it, right?
Yeah, I love that model. All right, listen, Peter, I know that we didn't plan on it going this long, but it's such a compelling story. We've got to share it. There's right over here, I've got their investor relations. If you are interested in the story, go to the investor relations page. sign up and get the alerts. Anytime they send out a press release or an SEC filing, you get it sent directly to your email. Start paying attention to this story. If you don't want to buy the stock today, I'm not telling anybody to buy the stock. That's not what I do. All I'm doing is trying to present the opportunity and, show you that management does have a clear vision. They are executing. They have a product that is in high demand, and I don't see that slowing down, right? And at some point, if Peter continues to, and the team continue to execute, that will reflect in the stock, because the market's not going to stay this way forever. I promise you.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't want to do it, just put it on your radar. That's what I'm telling everybody to do. Put it on your radar.
What I tell people is follow us, and then you'll be amazed.
Yep. All right, Peter. Fantastic. Listen, I wish you luck. I know you've got some other things that are in the works, and maybe when those things, when you can tell me and not have to kill me, we can have you back.
Absolutely, Tim. I thoroughly enjoy these conversations, and so next time we have some good breaking news, I'll give you a call.
All right, perfect. All right, hold on one second. I'm going to shut this off. No. Hey there, all you stock market junkies. Thanks for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Today we had Peter Evans from Patriot One Technologies, ticker symbol PTOTF. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, why not give us a follow? Till next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.